At the end of this video, you're going to have a full stack Next.js app that's actually on the internet. You're going to be learning Supabase with Drizzle ORM, Supabase Auth for authentication, and ShadCN UI. When we're done, we're going to deploy it with Vercel. Here's the final product. So we're going to be able to create an account and log in using Supabase Auth. As you can see, we're going to be using React Hot Toast. We're also going to be using ShadCN for a couple of these components. Once you're signed in, you're going to be able to create a new note, and then it's going to be posted to our Supabase database that's actually online. Once we have all these notes, you're going to be able to delete. This is also using ShadCN UI. We'll also be able to edit. All right, let's make it happen. All right, so let's get it started. We're going to pm dlx create next app at latest. We'll then name this notes app tutorial. Yes, TypeScript. Yes, ESLint. Yes, Tailwind. Yes, source directory. Yes, app router. No to this. All right, once that's set up, we can now cd into this and we can open this up in VS Code. So now what we can do is open this terminal, say pm dev, or if you're using npm, it's npm run dev. And so now we come over here to our localhost 3000 and we're going to see that this website is running. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to set a couple of things up. We're going to paste in this code right here to add this prettier plugin with Tailwind CSS so it automatically sorts our Tailwind classes. Once we do that, we're going to create a .prettierrc file. And inside of this file, we're going to say plugins, and we're going to say prettier plugin Tailwind CSS. So now that's set up. We're also going to want to come into this file and we're going to add one thing. We're going to say rules, and we're going to say React no unescaped entities, and we're going to set this to off. So when we end up deploying this, if any of the text that we write in our app is using an apostrophe or something, it will cause an error, and this prevents that. So now we're going to clean this up a little bit. We're going to come in here, we're going to delete both of these, we're going to come in here, we're going to get rid of this, we're going to come to globals, we're going to get rid of all of this, we're going to come to page, and we're going to remove all of this. We're just going to put notes app. We're going to remove this. We're going to remove all this CSS. And then we're going to come here to layout. And we're going to call this, you call it whatever you want. Mine's called Fire Notes. And put whatever description you want. We're also going to come in here and say pnpm add react hot toast. And once we do that, we can come here and we can say toaster and import this. So now throughout our app, we can use toast notifications wherever we want. We're also going to create a icon.tsx, and we're going to say RFCE. So in order to get that to work, you're going to want to come over here and you're going to want to set this up right here. ES7 React Redux React Native snippets. And that gives us a lot of things that speed up the development process. So actually what we're going to do is we're just going to paste this in. I have this set up so every single one of my apps, I just paste this. This is going to create, so when we save this, you can now see over here, it's going to have this little icon right here. You can add a .ico file, or you can use this if you don't have one. So if you go to the GitHub repo, you can just copy and paste this code. We're going to come back to this layout, and we're going to say toast options, and we're going to say style, and we're going to say text align center. And this is so if it's a multi-line toast, the text is all centered instead of being aligned to the left. So now we're going to set up ShadCN UI. So we're going to come over here to this ShadCN UI website, and we're going to go to the Next.js part. And what we're going to do is run this code right here. I'm using pm. You're just going to copy that, come in here, and we're going to paste that. And it's going to ask us a couple of questions. So I'm going to use default. I like to use Slate, CSS variables, yes. And it's going to automatically install all that for us. So now if we come in here to source and we come to app globals, we can see it's added all of this for us. And so I'm going to switch this up a little bit. You can configure it to have light mode and dark mode. I'm just going to make it so it's only in dark mode. So I'm going to copy all of that. I'm going to come in here, paste this, and then I'm going to delete this. And one thing that is not very good about this is you look at this primary. What do these numbers mean? We don't know what this color looks like. So what I do is I come over here and I go to my Tailwind config file, and all these HSLs, I'm going to replace all of these with RGB. I'm going to save that. So if we come over here now, this is going to cause a problem. So what we have to do is change all these from HSL to RGB. So if you go to the GitHub repo, I've already done that. You just copy that and paste it in. So now you can see on mine, it shows the color so we can more easily understand what's going on here. In order to see this color in this file, you're going to want to set up, or you're going to want to install this extension right here, color highlight. And then you might have to configure a few things. So I think what you might have to do, I don't remember. You might have to come here and select one of these so that it works without commas. I don't remember for sure. So now you can come in here, and what I always like to do is I like to go to Tailwind Colors, and I like to get all of my colors from here. And then it's somewhat annoying. You say, oh, I like this color right here. Well, it's got to be RGB. So you then go RGB to hex. And then you come here, you got to move this, or you got to change this from, let's see, hex to RGB. You then paste that in, you get these colors, boom. Make sure to remove the commas. Also, since we're already in this file, we can set this up, which we're going to use later. This is a custom scroll bar style that we're going to use in our notes. So now we can add all of the ShadCN components that we're going to use. So we're going to come over here, go to alert dialog, click this, use whatever you're using, and we're going to paste that in. But we're also going to add a couple of other things. We're going to add button, dialog, drop down, menu, input, and text area. So now when we run that, we come over here to our components. It's going to automatically create this UI library, and it's going to add all these components for us. So now we got that set up, we can configure Supabase. So we come over here to Supabase, and we're going to create a new project. You call this whatever you want. I'm just going to call this Notes app. And we come down here, we're going to want to generate this password right here. So you're going to want to copy this password. We're going to come back over here. We're going to create a .env.local. For now, we'll just paste that in. So now that we got that saved, we can create the new project. So in this .env.local file, we're going to want a couple of things. We're going to want db connection string. We're going to want Supabase URL. We're going to want Supabase a non-key. So now that this is ready, we're going to come in here. We're going to go to project settings. We're going to go to API, and we're going to copy this URL right here, and we're going to paste it in right here. We're also going to get this a non-public key, and then we're going to click right here on database, and we're going to get the connection string. And this is where that password that we saved earlier, we're going to replace your password with our password. And so now we got all of our keys set up. So we just got to configure a few more things, then we're going to get into some coding. We're going to set up Drizzle ORM right now. So we're going to come here and we're going to add a few packages. We're going to add Drizzle ORM. We're going to add Postgres. We're going to add .env. And then we're going to run $ampersand pnpm add capital D Drizzle kit. And we're going to run this. So I forgot to add add right here. Fuck off. God fucking damn it. So I forgot to add right here. So now that we got that, we run this. This should work. So now we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this DB. And inside of this folder, we're going to create index.ts. And this is where we're going to set up our Drizzle client that we'll be able to use through everywhere in our app. So we're going to create the client, which is going to equal Postgres, and we're going to say process.db connection string. And then we're going to say const db equals drizzle client. And then we're going to export default db. And then we come up here and we import these things. We're going to import drizzle from drizzle-orm/postgres.js. And then we're going to import Postgres from Postgres. This thing also doesn't know if this exists or not, which we know for a fact it does. So we're just going to add the bang to the end of this. So now we're going to come here, create another folder called migrations. And in this folder, we're going to create a file called migrate. And I make this a JavaScript file. So we're going to create a function called push migration, which is going to be async. And what this is going to do is, in order to create our schemas, such as we're going to create a note schema, in order to actually add the schema to the Supabase database, We first have to push it to the database, and this is the function that will run every time we run the script. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a migration client, and this is going to equal Postgres, port that, and it's going to be process.env.db connection string. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to say set max to 1. Then we're going to say const migration db equals drizzle, and make sure that you import this from drizzle-orm/postgres.js. And here we're going to put our migration client. Then we're going to say await migrate migration db, and then we're going to add the migrations folder, which is going to be set to source/db/migrations/drizzle. And then underneath this, we're going to say await migration client.end. And then we're going to push migration. So now we got this migrate file set up. In order to make this migrate file actually run, we need to add this script. There's multiple ways to set this up. Sometimes people create a drizzle config file, but what I do is I come in here to my package.json and I add a migrate script. And this script is going to be drizzle kit generate pg schema equals source/db/schema/schemas, and then anything that is a TypeScript file. We're then going to say the output of that equals source/db/migrations/drizzle. And then after that, we're going to say node source/db/migrations/migrate.js. So now all we have to do is come in here and we run pnpm migrate. If you're using npm, then you'd say npm run migrate. And so now it's going to have an error because we don't have a schemas folder, which we're going to add right now. So we're going to come right here and we're going to say schemas, and we're going to create a schema called notes.ts. And so now we're going to create our notes schema. So we're going to say notes equals pg table. And this is going to be called notes. This is what it's going to be called in your database. And then we're going to add an ID, which is serial, which we import. Make sure you import this from PG core because we're using Postgres. And this is going to be called ID, and it's going to be the primary key. We're then going to add user ID, which will be text. Also import this from PG core, and this will be called user ID. And this is not null. We're also going to add the text of the note. And then we're going to add created at and updated at. We're also going to come right here and we're going to say dot default now, and then come to this and change this to a timestamp, which we also have to import. And so now we can say export type note equals type of notes dot infer select. So now when we come down here and we say pnpm migrate, now it's going to add this. The fuck, it's not going to work. We got to come back here to this migrate.js and we got to add a few things. First, we need to import this migrate from, let's see, from this one right here. And then we also have to require .env config, and then we're going to also set the path to .env.local. So now when we come down here and we run pnpm migrate, now if everything works correctly, we come over here to our Supabase and we go to table editor. So it didn't work again. I forgot we got to come in here to notes.ts and we have to remember to export this. So now finally we come here and we say pnpm migrate. And so now we come into our Supabase project, we refresh this, and you can see we have this notes table. And it's got the user ID, the text, the created at, updated at. So now we got that set up, we're going to set up Supabase auth. So we're going to say pnpm add at Supabase/SSR. We're also going to add at Supabase/Supabase-JS. So we're going to add those two packages, and then we're going to come in here and we're going to go to authentication. We're going to go to providers, and we're going to go to email. And then for this demo, we're going to unclick confirm email. So I've made another video on how to set this up using resend email so that when you sign up, it sends you a verification email. If you want to know how to do that, then watch that video. But for this, if you sign up with an email, boom, you signed up, period. So click that and then save that. If you want to learn more in depth about Supabase Auth, watch that video. I talk about everything. So now in order to use auth, we're going to come here to lib and we're going to create an auth.ts. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the Supabase documentation right here. We're going to scroll down, and this right here, all we're going to do is we're going to take this code right here. We're going to copy this, and then we're going to create a function. We're going to export const get Supabase auth, and we're going to just paste that in. So we're going to import these things. We're going to come right here. We're going to say import create server client, and then also type cookie options. And this is from /SSR. So again, I cover all this in far more detail in another video. We're going to come in here. We're going to remove these comments right here. And then instead of returning this, we're going to say const Supabase client equals this. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to return the Supabase client.auth, because I never use just the Supabase client. It's always .auth. Once we do that, we can export a function called get user, which is going to be async, and it's going to be, we're going to get the auth object from that function we just set up. And then we're going to say const user equals, in parentheses, await auth.get user. And then outside of the parentheses, we're going to say data.user. And then we're going to say if there's not a user, we're going to redirect to the login page. And this is imported from the wrong spot. This should be from next/navigation. We then, if there is a user, we're going to return the user. So now we can use this function only in server components, server actions, and in route handlers. So now that we got this set up, we can come up here and we can create a new folder called actions. And this is where we're going to write our server actions. So we come in here, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call this users.ts. And at the top of this, we got to say use server. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to export const create account action. And this is going to be async, and it's going to expect some form data. And we're going to wrap everything in here in a try catch block. And then what we're going to return is error message. We're going to reuse what I'm about to write multiple times. So I'm going to create a function called get error message. And we're going to put the error in there. So we can come over here to our utils and we can create this function called export get error message. We got to say const right here. And this is going to accept an error, which is unknown, and a default message, which is a string, and I set this equal to something went wrong. We're going to say console.error, which this will show up in your Vercel logs when you actually deploy this if this happens. So we're going to show the error in the console. Then we're going to say let error message equals default message. And then we're going to say if error instance of error and error.message.length is less than 100. We're going to say error message equals error.message, and then we're going to return the error message. So now we come back over here and we can import this. So if there's an error, it's going to just show the error message, and you'll see on our front end, we're going to show that with toast if an error occurs. So to create this account in this form data, we're going to get the email and we're going to get the password from the form data. We're then going to say, we're going to destructure a potential error from await get Supabase auth, which is the function we just wrote. And then we're going to say sign up. And then in here, we're going to pass the email and password. And then we'll say if error, throw the error. If there's not an error, then we're going to say, we're going to get the destructure the data and the potential error from logging in. We're going to say equals await get Supabase auth, and we're going to say sign in with password. And then again, we're just going to pass in the email and password. And then we'll say if login error, throw the login error. And we'll also say if there's no data dot session, throw new error, no session. And if all that works, then we're going to return error message equal to null. And the reason we don't need to return a user from this function is because it just sets it in the cookies, and then we can access a user from anywhere in our app, which again, I cover in that other video. So we can create an account. Now let's log in. So we say login action, and it's going to be basically exactly the same, except we're not going to sign up first, and that's it. And we'll also create one more for signing out. So we'll copy this, we'll paste this, we'll call this sign out action. And we don't need any form data. We don't need this. We're going to say get Supabase auth, and we're going to say sign out. And we don't need any of this, and we don't need this data. So we'll get rid of this, and we'll just say if error, throw the error. Otherwise, we're chilling. So now that we got all that set up, we can head back over to our app, and we can create our first route that we're going to use. We're going to create a new file called create route/route.tsx. And we're going to do RFCE. We're going to call this create account page. I'm sorry. This shouldn't be route. This should be page is what I meant. And then we're coming here. We say RFCE, and we call this to create account page. And so now if we come over here to create account, it's not there because I called it create route, which is stupid. So let's see, rename this to create account. Now, if we refresh this, boom, create account page. So this is going to be a client page. So what we're going to do, we're going to say main, we're going to add a little bit of tailwind to this. We're going to say flex, min height, screen, item center, justify center, px of 4, pb of 24. We're then going to create a div, and we're going to add a little CSS to this. We're going to say relative flex, width full, max width small, flex call, item center, rounded large, border, bg popover, and a padding of 8. Inside of this, we're going to create an H1 that's going to say create account. So now we're going to come in here. We're going to style this a little bit. We're going to say margin bottom of 8, text 2XL, font semi-bold. And then beneath this, we're going to create a form. And inside of this form, we're going to use some shadcn input components. We're going to use 2 of them. And then beneath this, we're going to have a shadcn button. And this is going to be called create account. And then beneath this, we're going to add already have an account. And then we're going to add a link from next link. And it's going to say login. And we got to set the href equal to /login. So we're going to come to this form. We're going to add a little CSS. So we're going to say flex width full, flex call, gap 4. Then we're going to come to this input, and we're going to say type of text, name, email, placeholder, email. This is going to be required. And then we can actually just do this, copy that down. And instead of email, this is going to be password, changes to password. And then also this should be password as well. We come down to this, we'll add a little CSS to this. We'll say margin top of 3, text center, and text of extra small. You can also add some CSS to this. We're going to say margin left of 2, underline, transition colors, a duration of 200 milliseconds, ease in out. And we're going to say hover, the text is going to become primary. So now when we hover over this, boom. So now we want, when someone presses this button, we want it to run a function. It's going to run a server action. So we're going to say action, and we'll call this handle click create account button. And we'll come up here and we'll say const handle click create account button. And this is not going to be an event. This is going to be form data, which is of type form data. And then how I set up all of my server actions, I use transition. We're going to import that from React. And then we're going to come to this function and we're going to start the transition. And this is going to be an async callback function. And so we just go like that. And then inside of here, we're going to say await create account action, and we pass in the form data. And this is going to return our error message. So then we can say if there's not an error message, we can say router.replace with the home route, but we have to come up here and we got to say const router equals use router. Make sure to import this from Next navigation. And so now we come back to here, and then once we log in, we can say toast, which we have to import from React Hot Toast. We can say success, and then account successfully created, but we also just signed in. So we're going to say you are now logged in. And that's somewhat of a long message. So I'm going to change the duration to 500 milliseconds instead of 300. Now, if there's no error message, that's what's going to happen. If there is an error message, we're going to say toast error message. And so you can see right here, this use transition also gives us this thing is pending. So basically, while this transition is occurring, this is pending is going to be set to true. So we can come in here to all of these things and we can say disabled equals is pending. So now while this is loading, we're not going to be able to push any of these buttons. So now what we can also do is add this little loading thing that pops up when it's loading. So we can say is pending. If so, we're going to create a div. And in this div, there's going to be a p tag that says creating account. And beneath that, we're going to have this loader from Lucid Icons. And the class name is going to be size6. We're going to say animate spin. So we're going to come here. We're going to say absolute. We're going to say left 1/2 minus translate x 1/2. We're going to say top 1/2. We're going to say minus translate y 1/2. We're going to say flex of call item center, a gap of y2, and text of primary. Also forgot you got to add flex here as well. So just to see what this is going to look like, instead of const, we can say this is a let, and then we can say is pending equals true. And so we can see that this is going to pop up right here, but now all of this other stuff is still showing, which we don't want. So we're going to add some conditional CSS right here. We're going to wrap this in backticks, and then we're going to say is pending, and then we're going to say opacity of 0. So now we can see that that goes away. And we also want to add the same thing to this right here. So we're going to wrap this in some backticks. And then we're going to say is pending opacity 0. And we're also going to say minus z of 10. So now we can see when we're creating an account, this thing's sitting here and all that other stuff is hidden. So come back up here and change this back to const. So now we have our create account. And we already wrote this create account action. So let's see if this works. We're going to add in an email and a password. Create account. Something went wrong. Of course it did. So what the problem was, I copy and pasted this from the Supabase website, but we don't use Next public. So we got to come in here. This is in our lib/auth.ts. We're going to remove this. And now if we create an account, this should work. Creating an account. Boom. We're logged in. Just go to this create account page. We're going to copy all of this. And we're going to create the login screen. Login/page.tsx. Just going to paste all that in. And we're going to rename this to login page. And then we're going to change this to create account. We're going to say don't have an account. And then we're going to change this to login. We're going to change the name of this to handle click login button. We're going to change this to log in. And then instead of this create account action, we're going to say login action. And then we're going to change this message to successfully logged in. And this doesn't need to be 5 seconds. And so now if we go over here to application, and we go to cookies and we clear these cookies. So now we're not signed in. We can come over here. We can test the login functionality with the account we just created. And you can see Successfully logged in. So when we're logged in, we don't want them to be able to access the login screen or the create account screen. And we also want it so that they can't access the screen where you add notes unless you're logged in. So in order to accomplish that, we're going to come over here to source and we're going to create a middleware.ts file. And again, I covered this in detail in that other video. So we're just going to copy and paste this stuff and I'll explain it. All this code is in the GitHub repo. So right here, we have this function, get user. This is just getting the user, seeing if they're signed in. So right here, we have the middleware. Anytime the Next.js app tries to go to a route, it's going to run this function. It's going to run this middleware function. So it's going to come in here. It's going to get the path that you're trying to go to. And then we then say login and create account are unprotected paths. It then runs this function to get the user. We then say, is this an unprotected path? Is it the login screen or the create account screen? We say if they're signed in and it's an unprotected path, one of these, then redirect them to the home screen. Basically saying if we're logged in and we try to go to the login screen, it will not allow that and it will send us to the home screen. We say if we're not logged in and we try to go to any screen that isn't one of these, then it's going to redirect us to the login screen. So basically this is protecting every single route other than login and create account. And so now that we have this set up, if we come over here and we say we're going to go to the login, we're already logged in. We try to go to the login screen. It lets us. Let's come in here and let's restart this server. Let's see. So let's log in real quick. And so now if I go to the login screen, it doesn't work. Fuck. And so the reason it doesn't work is because I spelled this file wrong. This is middleware. This has to be called middleware correctly spelled. So now this should work. So now we're logged in. We come over here to the login screen. It doesn't allow us. It redirects us. So now if we come over here and we clear these cookies again and we refresh this, this is going to redirect us to the login screen. And if we try to go to the home screen, redirects us to log in, but it does allow us to go to the create account screen. I forgot to change that. Let's go back to log in and then change this from login to create account. So now this should work. So we can go to create account and the login screen. We can't go to the home screen. All right, so let's log in and we're going to start creating some functionality. So now we're over here at the home screen. We're going to come over here and we're going to create a component. This is not what I want. We're going to create a component called header.tsx. We're going to say RFCE, and then we're going to come over here to our page. And instead of this saying notes app, we're going to add the header. And so now our header is right here on the home screen. So first thing we can do is we can make this CSS a little better. So we can say flex, we can say min height screen, flex call, items center, px of 4, and a pb of 24. So now we can come in here to this header file and we can make this look a little bit better. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this an async function. We're going to say const user equals await get user with that function that we wrote earlier. So we import this. Now we have the user. So first thing, let's make this look a little bit less stupid. So we come here, we say relative margin top of 2, flex height of 20, width of full, max width of 5XL, items center, justify between, rounded large, background of popover, and px of 4. So now that's looking a little bit better. So we're going to have an H1, and this is going to be called fire notes. These notes are fuego. Then we're going to add some CSS, and we're going to wrap this in some backticks because we're going to add some custom font. So we're going to say text 4XL. When it gets too small, we're going to say text 5XL. We're going to say text secondary, and then we're going to say Lolita.class name. So then we got to come up here and we need to import this. Let's see, Lolita1 from next/font/Google. And then we come here and we say, we actually don't need to export this. We can say const Lolita equals Lolita1. And then we got to come in here and we have to say weight is 400. And so now you can see, boom, we got the custom font. We're also going to come right here and we're going to have the user button that we're going to be able to sign out with, which we have not added yet. And then we're also going to add the new note button, which we also have not added. So let's come into here. We're going to say user button.tsx rfce. And now we can come in here and import this. And also the same with new note button, new note button.tsx rfce. Now we come back into here and we can import this. So now we're going to have our user button right here, new note button right here. So let's get started with those. So let's create this user button. So we're going to come in here to user button, and then we're going to come over here to shad CNUI. And we're going to come over here to drop down menu. It's going to give us some code right here, which we can copy all of this, come into here and just paste it. We're going to remove quite a bit of this actually. So we can put a space right here, this drop down content. So we're going to come down here. We're going to remove pretty much all of this except for this label and the separator. I don't know why this is not working. Because of this. So we're going to come to right here. We're going to say modal equals false. This is port CN, which when you do shad CN, it automatically adds that. And then we're going to add a little CSS right here, text, secondary, transition, colors, duration 200, ease in, out, hover, text, primary. And then instead of this being a button, we're going to make this a user circle. We're going to say size of 10. And then when it gets too small, it's a size of 12. And so now we got this right here. When we hover, it changes color. And you can see it's got this going. We're going to customize this a little bit more. So we're going to come right here and we're going to change this to margin left of 4, margin top of 5. When it's small, a margin top of 4. And then instead of this saying my account, this is going to say user.email. And so now we need the user in here. So we're going to say user. We're going to say props. Also, we're going to be able to add class name. So we're going to say type props equals user, which is of type user, which we import right here from Supabase. Supabase JS, pretty much all of these right here. Let's clean this up a little bit. Let's see what else. I forgot to add from right here. And then class name is going to be optional of type string. So we're going to get rid of this. Oh yeah, now we have to pass in the user. So let's see. We come over here to our header, and this user button is expecting a user. So now this should work over here. So come back over to this user button, and right here we're going to say on click. We're going to say handle sign out. We then got to come up here and write this function. Const handle sign out equals. This is going to be async. We're going to, let's see, toast ID equals toast.loading. We need to import this toast, and it's going to say signing out. We're going to say await sign out action, and then we're going to say router.replace with login screen, and then we're going to say toast.dismiss toast ID, and then we need the router from use router from next navigation. Also, we got to come up here because it's a client component. We got to say use client. And now we're just going to add a little bit of CSS to this. Say rounded medium padding of 2. And then this is going to be an H3 tag that says sign out. And we're going to add text of small. So now we come over here, we're signed in, click sign out. Boom, it redirects us so we can log back in. Boom, we're logged in. It knows who we are. Come back to header and we're going to set up this new note button. So we're going to come right here and we're going to use shadcn for this. We're going to import the dialog component. And there's going to be a dialog trigger, which is going to be a plus from Lucid React. And then we're going to have the new note dialog, which we have to create. So we're going to come into here and say new note dialog.tsx rfce. And so now we can come back over here and import this. And so now we got to make this a client component as well. And let's style this up a little, 10, and then when it gets too small, it's going to be size of 12. And then we can come over to this user button and just copy and paste this. Oh, I also forgot to add right here. We have to add class name. So we can copy this and just paste this in. Import this. And then come right here and say optional of type string. So now we can hover over this. Looks kind of dope. We're also going to say use state, and we're going to say open. We're going to set this to false, and we're going to say open equals open. And we're going to say on open change. We're going to get open, and we're going to say set open to open. And then this trigger, we're going to say on click set open to true. All right, so let's go in this new note dialog and let's get this thing dialed in. So this is going to be a dialog content. And now this is not going to be visible unless it's open. So now we can see this dialog is actually working. So we're going to say class name of, once it hits small, we're going to say max width 425 pixels. So we're going to come here, we're going to say dialog header. And this is going to say add new note. And beneath this, we're going to have a form. And in this form, we're going to have a text area, which we get from shadcn. And this is going to be ID of text, name of text. We're going to say disabled equals is pending, which we're going to set up in a second. And then we're going to add a class name of margin bottom 6, margin top 2, min height 300 pixels. Let's actually comment that out for a second. So now if we look at this, we got this going a little bit. So beneath this, we're going to have our dialog footer. And this is going to have a button, which we also get from shadcn. And this is going to say if is pending. It's going to say adding note. Otherwise, it's going to say add note. And this is going to be of type submit. Disabled equals is pending, variant of secondary, and class name width of 40. So let's uncomment this out and let's come up here and let's say use transition, import that. So now we don't have these errors. So this is what it's going to look like. So we come to this action and this is going to be handle add new note. And then we come up here, const handle add new note equals async. And then we're going to start the transition and we're going to say const error message is going to equal await add new note action. And this is going to take in the form data. We haven't set this up yet. We're going to do that right after this. So we're going to say if there's no error message, do something, otherwise toast.error the error message. And this is not what we want. We want this to be set open to false, and we need this set open. Let's see, props. We're gonna, let's see, type props equals set open. We're just going to set this to any for a brief second. And then we're going to come down here. We're going to import toast. And then we're going to change this to successfully added note. And now we're going to come back over here and we need to pass in set open. And so if you hover over this, it's going to give you the exact type. So we're going to copy this and we're going to come over here and replace this any with that. And then we're going to import this. And so now we can save this and we come over here to actions instead of user, which I'm going to rename this to users actually. That's going to mess some things up. Hopefully it fixed it. So I'm going to create a new one called notes. And at the top of this, it's going to say use server. And we're going to say export const add new note action, which is going to be async, and it's going to take in the form data. So this is going to do nothing, but we can now come over here and we can now import this. We also need to get this form data from right here. So now this is going to work. We just need to now write this add new note action. So we can go into this and we can just copy this sign out action. It's going to be somewhat similar. So we come in here, we paste that, and then just get rid of that and import this. So now we got something. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to say const user equals await get user. We need to know which user is adding the note. We are then going to get the text from the form data. And now this is where Drizzle ORM comes in. We're going to import DB and we're going to say insert to notes. And the values that we're going to insert are text and user ID, which is equal to user.id. And so now we can successfully insert a note. So if we come over here, let's see, first note, and we add that, successfully add a note. So now we come into the Supabase and we can see our first note that we just added is in our database, and this is actually on the internet. So now if we come over here to our page.tsx, we can say export default async function. We're going to say const underscore notes equals await db dot. We need to import this. Select dot from notes, import notes, and then we're going to say dot where eq, import eq. This is equals, and we're going to say notes dot user id, comma. We're going to say user dot id, and so above this we need to say const user equals await get user, import this. And then so now we're getting the notes, and we also want to order by descending order notes dot updated at. So now we have all of the notes. And so this is Drizzle ORM. It's very good. If you want to know how to use it, go to their docs. Their docs are very, very good. They even have this AI thing. It's basically ChatGPT that knows all about the docs. So it's very good, very easy to use. If you know how to use SQL, you already basically know how to use it. So now if we come back here, we can say underscore notes dot map. For each note, we're going to return a div that just says, let's see, we'll say note dot text. And then right here, we'll say key equals note dot ID. And so now our first note. And if we come right here and we say second note and we add that second note, it didn't pop up. And the reason for that is because we need to go to this notes action. And what I forgot to do is you have to write revalidate path. And then you add the path that you want revalidated, which is this route in this case. So now when we come here and we say, what up, this note is dank. And now when we add this note, it's going to automatically revalidate. Boom. So now we're going to make this look dope. And then we're going to add deleting and updating. So let's come back over here to page and let's wrap this in a div, and we're going to add some CSS. Say margin top 8, grid width full, max width of 1800 pixels. We're going to say grid calls 1, gap 4. And then we're going to say once it gets too small, we're going to say grid calls 2. Once it gets too large, we're going to say grid calls 3. And then when it gets to XL, we're going to say grid calls 4. And instead of this just being some div, we're going to create a new component called note. And we'll say key equals note.id. And then we're going to pass in the note as well. So now let's go create this note.tsx rfce. And then we can say type props equals note. And this is going to be like that, but we need to say as note type so that this doesn't conflict with our function name. And so now we say note. We get this from props. So now we come over here and we import this note. And so now if we come right here and we can say note.text. And so now all we got to do is work on this note component. So we're going to come right here. We're going to add some CSS. We're going to say custom scroll bar, which we added at the beginning. We'll say a height of 96, width full, overflow Y auto, overflow X hidden, white space, pre-wrap, break, words, rounded large, background muted /80 for a little bit of transparency. And we'll say padding of 6. So now this is starting to look like something. Come down here and we're going to add another div. And this is going to be relative margin bottom of 2, flex, item center, and a gap of 2. And in here, we're going to have an H2, which is going to have the note dot updated at dot to ISO string. And we're going to say slice 0 to 10. And so this is going to give us the date in this format. And then we can also add some CSS to this. So we'll say text large, font semi-bold, text muted foreground. And then we can add an edit button and a delete button. And so now we got to create both of these. But first, let's also add the note.text. And so now let's create this edit button. And let's create the, and then we come in here and we can import both of these. And so now it's getting there. It's getting there. So first we'll work on this delete button. So we're going to need the note ID, and we get this from note.id. So we go to delete button, and this is expecting the note ID, and note ID is of type string. And also this is going to be a client component, which I don't think we actually have to write that, but I just like to do it. Because if something is nested in a client component, it's automatically a client component. So you don't actually have to write this, but I just like to do it for consistency so I know that when I'm looking at this code, it's a client component. So sometimes this happens. When I'm working with Supabase auth in development, this happens because I'm refreshing all the time and it's doing a bunch of calls, which isn't going to actually happen in production. So if this ever happens, just come to your terminal, close that out, and then just restart it, and it's going to work just fine. All right, so let's get started on this delete button. This is going to be wrapped in an alert dialog from shadcn, and there's going to be the alert dialog trigger, which I imported from the wrong spot. And this is going to be a trash 2, and then we're going to have alert dialog content, which you could write this in a different component if you wanted, but I'm just going to keep it all in one. We'll say alert dialog header. And it's going to say, are you sure you want to delete this note? And then we'll say alert dialog description. And we'll say this action cannot be undone. This will permanently delete this note. Delete this note from all records. So now we come to alert dialog footer. And in this, we're going to have alert dialog cancel, which is going to say cancel. And then we're also going to have, and I'll explain this in a second, but we're going to wrap this button in a form, and it's going to be alert dialog action. And it's going to say is pending deleting note. Otherwise, it's going to say delete note. And so first thing we need is use state, and we're going to say open. We're going to set this to false, and then we're going to have a use transition, and we're going to say const handle delete note, which is going to be async, and it's going to have start transition async, and this is going to be an arrow function. And we're going to have the same style that we have for all of them. Error message equals await delete note action. And we're going to pass in the note ID. And then we're going to say if there's no error message, set open to false. And we're going to say toast.success successfully deleted note. Otherwise, we're going to say toast error with the error message. So the reason this is in a form as opposed to having this be on click is because for whatever reason, when it's not in a form, this does not work properly. So basically, this thing right here, this set open to false, is supposed to happen after this delete note action occurs. When it's not in a form, it just immediately runs. So instead of having this be on click handle delete note, we're going to have this action be handle delete note, and this is just going to be type of submit. So now when we click this button, it's going to submit this form action, and this is also supposed to be a number. So we can come here and we can say open equals open. We can add some CSS to this, say absolute, say minus right 2. We can say on click set open to true. We can comment this out for a second, and now we can see if we click this, it's going to pop this up. And you can see this doesn't work yet, so we got to come down here. First, let's add some CSS to this. We'll say size of 5, text destructive. We'll say /50, and then we can come right here and we can say disabled equals is pending, and then on click we'll set open to false. So now that will work as expected. We're also going to come right here and we're going to add some CSS. We're going to say BG destructive. We're going to say hover BG destructive. We need this because we need to overwrite this alert dialog action has some weird other CSS. So we need to overwrite that. And we say hover brightness 110. And then we also say disabled equals is pending. So now come here, delete this note. It's not going to do anything. So now what we need to do is write this delete note action. So we'll come over here to notes. We'll just copy this, paste it, and we'll say delete note action. And this does not want form data. This wants a note ID, which is of type number. So if we come back to this now, we can import this and we just have to write this. And this is very simple. We say await DB and we say delete. We're going to delete from notes and we're going to say where, and we're going to import and from drizzle ORM, which means both of these things have to be true. We're going to say notes.id, note ID. Oh, this has to be wrapped in an EQ, which we have to import. So the note ID has to be equal to the note ID we passed in, and then we do another eq where we say notes.userID has to be the same as user.id. And so now this should work. So we say, what up? This note is dank. We come here, we delete the note, deleting note, successfully deleted note, boom. Now all we got to do is edit and then we're ready to deploy. So since we're in here, let's just write this edit note action right now. So delete note action, this is going to be called edit note action. And instead of note ID, this is going to take in form data, which is of type form data. Actually, what we can do is go like this because it's very similar to this. Paste that in. And not only do we get the text, but we get the note ID equals form data dot get note ID as string. And then instead of this, we're going to say await db dot update notes dot set text and updated at to new date. And then we're going to say where and then we're going to say eq notes dot id equals note id, and then also eq notes dot user id user.id. And then we also have to come to this and wrap this in a number. So now we got the edit note action. We just got to set up the button. So let's come over here to edit button. And let's start off by saying use client. We can also say type props equals note, which is of type note. And then we can say note props. And right here, we're going to use state. We're going to say open, which is going to be set to false. And then we're going to replace this with another dialog, which we import from shadcn. And this is going to have a dialog trigger, which I imported wrong again. I imported it wrong yet again. This is what we want. This is going to be edit, which we import. And then we have this thing going on, so we have to reset this server. And so we can come right here and we can say open equals open on open change, boom. This dialog trigger, we're going to say on click, set open to true. And then this edit, we can have some CSS to this. Size 5, text muted foreground. Okay, so we got this. Now we just need to add the dialog content. And I'm going to write this in a separate component. Edit note dialog, and this is going to take in set open and note. So now we can come over here, we can create edit note dialog.tsx rfce, and this is going to be a client component. We say type props equals, this thing knows a little bit. We need to import this, and then we can change this. Remember, we hover over this and it tells us the type we want. So we get that, come over here, got to import this and this. And then we come right here and we say set open and note, which is of type props. And then we're going to use a transition. We're going to have const handle edit note, which is going to be async. It's going to take in the form data of type form data. And this is going to do the same thing we've been doing this whole time. And this is also going to be the same, equals await edit note action form data. We say if there's not an error message, let's see, else yes. So import that toast. And then we just need to import this edit note action. And now we got to come down here and we got to add this dialog content. Dialog content. There's going to be a dialog header and a dialog title. We're just going to say edit note. So what we can do right here, we can go to, let's see, new note dialog, and we can just copy this, come over here, paste this in, and then just change a few of these things. We need to import a few things. And then instead of adding note, we can say updating, or we can say update. We can change this to edit. And now we need to import this. And let's see what is going on with this. We need to, let's see, we need to pass in the note. And now we should be able to edit this second note. Nope. One more thing we have to do is edit note dialog, and we say default value equals note. Second note, say, what up, bro? Add that. Didn't work. Let's see what's going on. So I need to add an input. This is going to be hidden, and this is going to be of name equals note ID. And this is a value of note.id. This is how we pass in the note ID to this form data. There's another way you can bind it as well, but this way is just much simpler. So now we come in here, second note, what up, bro? Now, boom. And we can see also if we edit this one, it's going to show up first. You can see it's always going to show. So boom, this thing works like a charm. Now let's deploy it to the internet. So in order to do this, we're going to need a GitHub account and a Vercel account, both of which are free. So we're going to go to GitHub and we're going to create a new GitHub repo. We'll call this Notes App Deploy. Call this whatever you want. And I'm going to make this public so you guys can see it. This thing is covering it. So we're going to create this repository. And so now we're going to come in here. We're going to copy this code right here. Come over to this. We're going to paste that in. We're going to click enter. And now this thing is connected to this repo. So if we refresh this, we can now see that the initial commit is there. So now we need to say git add period. Say git commit -m done. And then we say git push. And so now if we refresh this, this should be our finalized project. And so now that we have this on GitHub, we can come over here to Vercel, create a Vercel account, and we're going to say add new project. We have this repo right here, so we import it. And then what we're going to do is environment variables. So we're going to come over to our project. We're going to go to this .env.local. We're going to do Control A and then Control C to copy all of this. And then all you have to do is Control V, and it automatically sets it all up for you. So I think we're ready. Let's click deploy. Let's see what happens. It worked. This thing is now live on the internet. Let's go check it out. You can see, boom. Let's log in. Let's see if it all works. We log in, successfully logged in. Boom. Now you have a full stack app that is deployed to the internet. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments.